Since 2014, WWE games made the official jump to the 8th generation of consoles. WWE games began being made for the PS4, Xbox One, and for the first time in over a decade for the PC. Since 2014, we've gotten our yearly WWE games, and without a doubt, over the years, they have definitely improved. 2K19 is a solid wrestling game, and if you were to compare it to 2K15, the first 8th generation wrestling game, it's not even fair. 2K15 was a disaster, one of the worst wrestling games ever. You know what game is bad? When IGN gives it lower than a 6. There are various factors in what made 2K15 such a disappointment. Obviously, the hype of the new consoles played a factor, the hype that this was the first WWE game that 2K really worked on. However, the most important factor was, it was following up 2K14, and 2K14 was such a good wrestling game. An all-time great wrestling game as a matter of fact. 2K14 was just special. It was the last WWE game made exclusively for the 7th generation of consoles, and it was sure a great way to cap off a generation of wrestling games. By 2013, the PS3 and Xbox 360 had lived great lives, great games, and some really fun wrestling games as well. So this was it. This was the conclusion. Everything from when SVR 07 came out on the 360 and when SVR 08 came out on the PS3 built up to this. This was the climax, and as a result, one of the most complete wrestling games ever was produced. A game that even 5 years later you could argue is still better than some of the newer wrestling games. So what was it? What made this game so good? I mean, it did come out on the tail end of the console's lifespans at this time, and by this time other sports games such as NBA 2K14, FIFA 14, and Madden already made the jump to the new generation. However, WWE games stayed back a year. Well, let's just take a look at what made WWE 2K14 so good. It's hard to have a good racing game without good racing cars. I mean, Need for Speed Most Wanted in 2005 would have been pretty boring if you could only race in Civics and Corollas. The same principle applies to wrestling games. Over the years, wrestling games at times have had amazing rosters, and then the next year they would have severely downgraded rosters. 2K14 had an amazing roster. Now, it's hard to have every wrestler possible, and it's hard to please everyone, and also due to licensing, it's hard to get some key players sometimes. So 2K14 is missing some great wrestlers like Kurt Angle, but the selection they do have is amazing. You got the best superstars from every decade. From the 80s and 90s, you have Hogan, Flair, Savage, Steamboat, Warrior, Andre, to name a few. You got the biggest stars from the late 80s and early 2000s like Rock, Austin, Foley, Jericho, Lesnar, Goldberg. The mid 2000s are covered with Cena, Batista, Edge, and just so much more all the way to the modern day of 2013. The roster is huge and it's perfect, and also includes a debut of Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns in video games. The roster is great, especially because the abundance of attires. So you have Hogan, you have the 80s version, but then you have attire for the 90s version, you have the NWO version, you have HBK, but you have the 90s version, the late 90s, the early 2000s, all the way to 2010. It's perfect. 84 wrestlers, and that's not including the attires, and you have 100 creator wrestler slots, which we can talk about later. Simply put, the roster had it all. Then you had Showcase Mode. Showcase Mode was introduced in WWE 13 when they let you relive the Attitude Era. In 2K14, the focus was WrestleMania. Because of this mode, we got that great roster I was talking about. WrestleMania Showcase was just fun. You play matches from WrestleMania 1 all the way to WrestleMania 29. Relive great matches you grew up watching, or relive bad matches you grew up watching and make them better. So many iconic matches here. Hogan vs Andre, HBK vs Razor in a ladder match, Austin vs Rock. They even added some not so iconic matches just so you can unlock the wrestlers and the arena. So reliving matches was fun, but I just loved unlocking the wrestlers, the attires, and my favorite part was unlocking the arenas. So this is the only WWE game with every single WrestleMania arena from 1 till 29, and they all look great. Complete with animations and logos and graphics. It was just so cool to see all these arenas look so legit and not have to create them or download them. Every single WrestleMania up until that point was here, and I really wish they did this for more games in the future. It was so fun to use these arenas in other modes, but even just going back and playing these classic matches, Showcase was fun. The reason I like this Showcase and the Attitude one is you're not limited to using 1 or 2 characters like the Daniel Bryan or the Stone Cold Steve Austin one. It gets boring playing the same character, whereas here you go from Hogan to Flair to DiBiase to HBK to Austin, Rock, Triple H. It's just so diverse and just fun overall. Okay, so maybe reliving moments isn't your thing, and you like creating new moments. Well, you had Universe Mode to do that. Now, if you played any WWE game since 2010, I'm sure you know what Universe Mode is, and this game had a great Universe Mode. I still think 12 had the best one just because of the random cutscenes, but this one was very similar and it was very good. I like the universe mode because you obviously had the control, and the roster itself was just so much fun to play with, and because of that you could set up the universe mode however you wanted. The most fun I ever had in any universe mode in any WWE game was in 2K14 when I set up this ruthless aggression mode, and I had the proper arenas, the logos, I had the roster, I mixed in some current superstars with it, I had these great feuds. I had so much fun and I put so much time into it. The best part about this was the universe felt alive. It felt authentic and legit. It didn't feel like you were just playing a bunch of exhibition matches in a row. You could put hours into this mode and not get bored. I love creating my own storylines in my mind and doing my own commentary. I felt like a little kid playing with a bunch of action figures and just having my own universe. It was fun. I felt like a kid when I was playing this, even though I was in like grade 12 when this came out. It was just fun. Another mode that they added just for this game was in celebration of The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. Yeah, remember when The Undertaker was undefeated at WrestleMania, then he lost his bullshit match against Brock Lesnar and he should have retired? Wait, okay, I'm getting on a rant. There were two modes, defend the streak and defeat the streak. Defend the streak was whatever, it was just a gauntlet. However, defeat the streak was so fucking elite, I loved it. It was simple, you just choose a wrestler and you verse The Undertaker at WrestleMania. But let's just say that The Undertaker was on some next fucking steroids in this game mode. You actually had to fight for your life. It was an actual challenge and it was fun because it was hard and it didn't feel like a normal play now match. Nah man, they had so many special animations just for this match. The Undertaker legit had fucking superpowers. Just check these little clips out. You legit had to put in so much work, and it was such a fun mode because you actually had a challenge. When you play as many wrestling games as I did, and I'm sure you guys have ever since you were kids, wrestling game versus the computer isn't a challenge anymore. However, this actually was. You actually had to pay attention all times. You actually had to put in work, and I loved it. Now this mode isn't something you would play every day because it would be boring as fuck if you did that. But it's one of those modes that every now and then when you needed a challenge, you would play this and you just remember like, damn, this is so fun. It's an actual challenge. Imagine that. A wrestling game that gives you a challenge. This mode was also good for when you had friends over and you were playing this game. I would always make them verse The Undertaker and they would just assume it's gonna be a normal match, and then all this crazy shit starts happening. The Undertaker puts him in the triangle choke or he disappears. And it's just so fun seeing the reaction on their face. This was a different mode and it was fun. Like I said, it's not one of those modes you play all the time, but the fact that they went out of the way to add this, I just respect that. So now let's talk about my personal favorite game mode in this game. And ladies and gentlemen, if you played these games, if you played 10, 11, 12, and 13, and 14, you remember this. It was called Create a Story. What a mode this was, and man, do I miss this. You could create legit any type of story you could possibly imagine. Make whatever you want and then play it or upload to community creations having other people play it. And the best part is you can download other people's stories too and just play as many stories as you wanted. There were unlimited amount of story modes you can do in this game, and the best part is the stories you downloaded, they weren't some cheap whack ass stories. No, people put so many hours into these and made them legit as possible. Some of the stories were so legit I felt like I was playing Shut Your Mouth or Here Comes the Pain season mode. Just look at some of these playthroughs on YouTube. The stories could be goofy, could be serious, however you want them to be. They were so fucking fun and there's always something there for you. Look at these. Who is the real John Cena? Who killed Kofi Kingston? Vince Russo books Raw. It sucks that the service got shut down so you can't download any stories anymore, but that doesn't stop you from making your own stories and just playing them with you, your friends, or whatnot. It was a great feature and I'm so sad they never added this again because, like I said, create and play as many stories as possible. So realistically, you never ran out of things to do in this game. So other create modes were here too. You had create a superstar and it had so many options. You had the glass create a finisher and just look at the crazy shit you could make. Obviously create arena was here, superstar threads was here. It had it all. And that's what I loved about this game was, like I said, it was a conclusion of all the previous wrestling games from this generation, and it took the best features from all the games and it put it in here and it made the grand finale of the 7th generation of wrestling games. In some shape or form, you had everything from SVRO 7 up until WWE 13. You had something from each game, which helped make this such a good game, which is why I don't understand in 2K15 why they had to build everything from the ground up, because all that progress they made was just lost and down the drain. But luckily for us, at least we got this. We got some closure, we got the conclusion, we got one of the best wrestling games of all time. To finish off, you could have all the modes in a game and have all the things to do, but it could still not be fun because of the gameplay. However, that's where I love 2K14 the most. It was a perfect blend of simulation and fast-paced wrestling. The gameplay, in my opinion, was perfect. It was arcadey, but it was realistic. It wasn't too much of either or. Like these days, it's too much simulation based for me. This was perfect. It wasn't too fast and it wasn't too slow. I love playing these matches. It took WWE 13's gameplay and fixed all the wrong shit with it. It felt like the right amount of arcade and right amount of sport. I know not everyone likes this type of gameplay and some people prefer the new one, but for me, it was perfect. I loved the gameplay. Listen, it's a WWE game. Are there gonna be a shit ton of glitches? Hell yeah, but that's what makes it fun. And I just love the gameplay in here. If you pick this up right now, sure, the graphics look a little outdated, but I guarantee you, you will have fun playing wrestling matches here. I love this game. The modes are there, the roster's there, and the gameplay's there. What more could you ask for? It is legit one of the most complete wrestling games of all time, and I promise you, if you go back and play this right now, you'll still have fun. Is the game 5 years old? Yes, it is. Do the graphics look outdated? Yeah, they kind of do. But the gameplay is what makes the game. The roster makes the game. The game modes make the game. It's not just about the graphics. The PS3 and Xbox 360 had a lot of ups and downs when it came to wrestling games. Luckily for us though, the ending, it was amazing. It was perfect and it gave us one of the most complete wrestling games ever. THQ disbanded in 2012, and 13 was technically the last THQ wrestling game. But let's be real, this is just as much of a THQ game as a 2K game. And I'm happy to say all the ups and downs THQ had with the WWE series, at the end of the day, they helped make 2K14 what it was, and they gave us fans so much enjoyment through all their games that I'm happy to say that their last game was just a damn good wrestling game, and it was one of the best wrestling games of all time.